interest initially because it was very badly reported by some people on their Twitter feeds, and by all accounts, a lot of conspiracy folk and alien believers have been interested in this. But what it actually was back to the Atari 2600. Now, many years ago, when the Atari 600 was in its heyday in the 80s, they released a game called E.T., and it was based on a film, and it was predicted to be horrendously popular. But unfortunately, the game was rushed. They had very little time to produce it, and when it hit the shelves, it was one of the worst titles, even in the Atari 2600 days, that anybody had ever played, and then ended up shifting about, I believe, about 500,000 units, which was appalling because they'd produced millions expecting a smash hit.
I may have played that, to be honest.
Yeah.
I remember.
Well, you can on the emulator, funny enough.
I was
Now,
very young
this
at
is
the time.
this is where the story gets a little bit weird, because what they decided to do with all these copies of E.T., the computer game, they put them into a landfill in New Mexico, which apparently is a landfill where Atari have dumped their stuff before. Perfectly legally, I hasten to add, not just digging holes and dropping stuff in them. This was an official landfill site.
Usually they export it to Africa or China first.
Well, it's
export and they outsource the poisons. That's the typical.
Our old ET made his trip to New Mexico, and he's been buried in a landfill. And there was a mission set up a few weeks ago for a load of diggers to go over there and start sticking a shovel in the desert and try to find our ET. And it's just been reported that they have unearthed him in New Mexico. There's apparently thousands of titles there. It's all rather interesting. What's made more interesting slightly is that the people that got the wrong end of the stick when this news first hit. So yeah, go and check it. Mashable have reported it properly, so you can see the whole article there, and I think they've got footage of them digging up the first copy of it. So very interesting bit of retro computing there. And my question now is, after being buried for about 30 odd years in a desert in New Mexico, does the cartridge still work? So
they may have actually made those in the US back then, if it's like the 80s.
Yeah.
They may have actually had factories to make electronics. Imagine that. No, actually, they still have a few, actually.
Just goes to show you, they obviously make things to last in those days, because there's a very proud picture of a chap holding up a copy of E.T., surrounded by cameras. Yep, and it says, yes, unearthed New Mexico, and gaming history has been discovered. So there you are. You can check that out over at Mashable.
Just north of New Mexico, they have lots of nuclear waste buried in mountains, which is probably safer than putting it somewhere next to the seashore. But it's becoming a real issue. And, the U.S. still manufacturing nuclear weapons and trying to modernize its arsenal. And the expense is something like tens of billions right now per year. And I think education and healthcare should come first. But I guess the Cold War is the next big war to make money to make some money from.
Yeah.
And there was some success, not so much in Syria. It did aggravate Russia, but now in Ukraine they get lots of aggravation. And here we are, now there is justification for many countries to kind of beef up their military budget. So, that's another topic.
Talking of topics, I'm sure you have something else we can.
There is a bug in OpenSSL, and I wrote, I think, 4 articles about it. And if you would like to hear my opinion, I can share it briefly. So, nobody knew anything about a bug in OpenSSL. Although I had already covered one such bug last year when I wrote about Red Hat and connections it has to the NSA. Connections which, by the way, go beyond SC Linux, and staff from inside Red Hat confirmed that they even get patches sent from the NSA that they then submit to Linus, and he doesn't know it came from the NSA. So, and there is also a program which was explained by a FreeBSD developer from Denmark that would allow them to kind of put in bug doors, not back doors, but bug doors in software. So I already have a lot of suspicion, even of companies like Red Hat, when it comes to backdoors. I wrote several articles about it, and the company's staff, when replying to me, was not really able to counter what I had claimed. That was a real cause for concern. That we already know that there were attempts to put backdoors in Linux several times before, and even the father of Linus Torvalds. This is something we hadn't had time to cover. Spoke about it. So here we have this situation with OpenSSL again, and I only knew about it because there was a website one morning, and the website was a .com website. It has a logo. It has a nice, catchy name and stuff. And I decided to explore who is behind this thing, and it turns out it's a partner of Microsoft. And who's the chairman of the board, the former chief of security at Microsoft, who had also worked for the FBI. And you know, the FBI knows all the tricks of how to infiltrate software. We now know the NSA apparently knew this trick for at least 2 years since it happened. And this thing was announced on, I think, the 7th of April to the public, which is exactly, curiously enough, the same day when a lot of corporations, some of which I work with in the UK, basically said, okay, this is the last day that Windows XP is a supported operating system. It's not secure anymore. Let's move to Linux and open source. So I think there was a strategic disclosure there. Now, this firm did not actually discover the bug. The bug was discovered quietly in Google sometime before, but this company just abducted the bug. It gave him a name. It did a whole kind of PR campaign to promote this thing and completely flood the press with bad publicity for FOSS, like is FOSS still something you can trust? Of course, because a few lines of code that completely changes everything you ever knew about open source, even though Coverity, which is tied to the US government, a few days later published a study saying again, free software has got better quality than proprietary code in terms of bugs. So I wrote several posts highlighting the most recent post is actually quotes from the company itself saying that it exploited the thing to publicize itself. And the day that it did that, it basically completely distracted the world from the idea that Windows XP, many users, especially in companies and governments, are still using it. It distracted from the idea that people should move to free software, and everything to do with free software at the time was just, is it secure enough? Is it not secure? You cannot trust it, and so on and so forth. So I think it was a big PR campaign. Is the bug so serious? Yes, it's quite serious. However, it's things like this kind of happened before, and it takes a lot of computing power to exploit those bugs. So those with supercomputers can probably exploit them. The NSA, for instance. But no apocalypse has happened since then. And the latest articles will just tell you this was just a big hype over something that was serious, but not that serious. And when it was announced, all the major GNU/Linux distributions had already patched the bug. So all they had to do basically just apply the patches, you'll be fine. So it seems to me like there was a big publicity stunt, and I don't even want to say the name of the bug, and it's all just marketing, and it's rather gross. It completely flooded the news over the past 3 weeks.
Well, I think there is a concern by everybody with an interest that when that XP went the journey, there would be certainly looking at other options and solutions. Whether big industry would have ever considered going elsewhere for their, or big corporations for their
These computers would not run any version of Windows except XP. Few of them would. Probably not Vista or Vista 7, but the only logical step now is